I decided to mix my solo album in London at a legendary old-school studio called Trident. I wanted to fly there on the Concorde, something I'd never done.
All aboard!
Somewhere over the Atlantic, it struck me that the plane wasn't level. It was flying at an angle. But what did I know? Then the pilot came on the PA and said in a calm voice, "This is your captain speaking. Now, folks, you may have noticed we're flying at a slight angle. We've lost an engine."
Taxi! What?
We're in the middle of the fucking Atlantic with one engine. We're on our way back to Kennedy Airport. If we're flying on one engine, why don't we go down to about 5 feet above the water instead of 55,000 feet above it? The captain came on 10 minutes later. "We're using more fuel than expected because we're flying subsonic, so we're not going to make it to New York." That's not good. We're going to divert to Nova Scotia. I don't like this at all. Why are we so damn high up?
I've got to get out of here. Down, get a hold of yourself.
Stewardess, please let me handle this.
I've got to get
Calm down, now seat.
Taxi!
Before too long, the same calm voice came on again. "We're not going to make Nova Scotia." Where on earth are we going to go? "We're going to land at Gander Airport in Newfoundland. We need a long runway." We made it to Gander and landed. They paired people up and shuttled us off to a local motel. I said there was no fucking way I was bunking with someone. No. The next day, a DC-10 made an unscheduled stop and picked us up. What should have taken 3.5 hours ended up taking 17 hours. But once in London, I enjoyed it this time.
The only other song I did from anybody else was Bobby Lewis's Tossin' and Turn. And I always liked it because I have insomnia. And I can't sleep at night.
No.
And Vinny came up with it anyway. And he said, the song has never been done, only once. And with your voice and my arrangement, let's redo it, man. And it's a great tune. And it is. I love it, you know. And the other tune, You Matter to Me, I don't know who wrote it, but he brought that in for me and rearranged it. It's the only 2 tunes I'm doing from somebody else. All the rest I've written myself.
As I went on with a solo project, I wanted to pursue my Beatles obsession. So I rented a recording studio in Oxford, England, down the road from where George Harrison lived. Anytime I wanted another star to appear on the record, I flew them in and treated them like royalty. I tried to make a point, a showy point granted, that I was capable of playing guitar. So on the album I didn't play bass at all.
No.
I only played guitar. Cher and Chastity appeared on one song called Living in Sin at the Holiday Inn. Sean Delaney produced my solo record, and he brought in Michael Kamen to arrange and conduct about 30 of the finest string players in Los Angeles. One morning they had arrived and were seated inside the recording studio, ready to do their parts on a song I'd written called Man of a Thousand Faces. Sean had arranged to have them all wear Gene Simmons face masks.
I walk the streets by day.
The ones that were for sale in stores. It was certainly one of the most bizarre moments in my life. On another occasion, I had Janice Ian at the studio at the same time Grace Slick came down to record with me. I had met Grace on tour because she was seeing our lighting director and would visit him on the road. Janice, Sean, and I were discussing some ideas when suddenly all hell broke loose. Grace had apparently ingested some chemical that didn't agree with her constitution. She flipped out, and studio staff helped her out of the studio.
When I met Anton, he was like this green. He was very green. He hadn't played with a lot of famous people. You know, he went to school in Boston. He's from South Africa, by the way, Cape Town. A friend of mine, Larry Russell, said to me, I know this guy Anton Fig because I was looking for a drummer for the record. He told me about Anton. He said, this guy's great. Then about 3 days later, Eddie Kramer called me, my producer, and he said, there's this guy I heard about called Anton Fig, and I want you to audition him. You know, so when you get that from 2 different people you know and trust, I called them up and said, let's get together and jam. And it was just like magic. And it's been magic. Every time I've worked with Anton, you know, we have like this telepathy. You know, I don't even have to tell him what to do. I'll just look at him and he does the drum fill. We've been close friends ever since.
If you think about it, the sounds have changed so much. I mean, like now the Bee Gees are in, and disco is very big. I mean, I thought disco would last for a year. It's the biggest thing happening, and the song "You Matter to Me" is very disco. So I did it. I did disco too, only my way. It's an old style that we know about that I brought back, and to them it'll be a new sound all over again. Music is a circle, clothing is a circle, everything's a circle. It comes back.
Other pairings were just as exciting. Helen Reddy came down to sing on a song called True Confessions. I had ping pong tables set up inside the recording studio, and Helen and I played ping pong. Donna Summer did me the favor of singing with me on Burning Up with Fever. She blew the roof right off. We got along well. By that time, she'd become our record company's next big thing. And Bob Seger, another hard-driving rock and roll vocalist, sang with me on Radioactive, which became the single off the record. We had known Bob for many years. Earlier, he had opened for us on tour. At one of the shows, while Seger and his band were getting ready to go on stage, I stood alongside Alto Reed, his horn sax guy. Alto mentioned that he needed something to drink. He said his mouth was dry. I offered him a piece of gum, which he said he would start chewing right away. That night was a strange one for the Seger show. You see, at that point in my life, I loved pranks and would often buy whoopee cushions and the like. I also bought onion gum, which looks like gum and tastes like gum initially, until about the 10th chew, when a hard onion taste explodes in your mouth.
The great thing about Kiss was we had 4 lead singers, which doesn't happen too often. I think the Beatles had it. That's, we could do 4-part harmony, The Who could do like 3-4-part harmony, The bands where everybody can sing lead, it's such a huge, huge advantage. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
The solo project was unprecedented. No other group in history had ever released 4 solo albums simultaneously. Even though the solo albums were a way for Ace and Peter to feel they had a bit more creative control, we were intent on controlling the project. Both our management and our record company, Casablanca, released all 4 solo records on the same day in 1978. Insisted that each album have the same kind of artwork. We all used the same artist, Eraldo Carugati, so the entire project felt like a coordinated band solo release, something that has never been done before or since. All the albums did well. They sold strong initially and have continued to perform.
When the 4 solo albums came out in late 1978, you could see the glasses half full or half empty. Selling around 500,000 copies each was nothing to sneeze at. 2 million records if you looked at them collectively as a Kiss product. But since Neil had shipped 1 million of each, what was he supposed to do with the other 2 million copies? It was too much hype, and because of the leftover records, a financial disaster for Casablanca.
Well, I just wanted to make the best record possible, and I had a revelation after all 4 albums came out and mine became the most successful. Try to get Gene to admit it, though. You're wrong.
After 20-plus years of sales figures, I'm at the top, slightly ahead of Ace.
No.
Who is slightly ahead of Paul. Peters sold the least well of the 4.
Not by any fault of his own. It was just, drummers never get the, they never get the attention that like a lead guitar player gets, or Paul Stanley's front man, Gene sticking out his tongue, flying, up into the light truss. I can't forget, at the end of the show, Peter used to levitate, 15 feet in the air with his drum kit.
None of the albums really yielded hits. The song that got the farthest was Ace's cover of a song called New York Groove, which went to number 14.
Pretty much, there's this voice in my head going, Ace, you're a lot more creative away from those guys than you are with them. So that was kind of the beginning of the end for me, because I realized that, I could make a lot better music away from Paul and Gene and Peter than I could with them. I was also drinking and doing a lot of drugs, so that could have affected my decision-making.
The solo album was a big boost for Ace.
Withstood the test of time. 40 years later, it's still a great record.
For the first time, he was thrilled. because he could walk into a room and be the only star. The guy who had his own thing going on, his own album with his own face on the cover. The irony was that when he first joined the band, he didn't want to sing or write songs. He just wanted to be the guitar player. We had forced him to start writing songs. Once he found out he could do it, he actually delivered the goods. He was able to put out an album that in a lot of ways was probably the most cohesive of the four.
The solo albums did quell the need for Ace and Peter to leave, but they represented nothing more than a Band-Aid on a gaping wound.
Radioactive, my single, stopped in the 20s, and Paul's Hold Me, Touch Me was a little lower than that. Peter didn't chart.
When I don't compare us to the Beatles, because I love the Beatles, I mean, they're my favorite band, but we are a phenomenon, and we're the only group that, like the Beatles, sold lunch boxes and radios and buttons and buckles and all that stuff, and no other band's done that, and we had the largest show that's ever been put out, and we do cause insanity and kids go crazy, you know, and I haven't seen that since the Beatles. And we're the first New York band to become a supergroup. No New York band has ever become a supergroup, nor sold out the Garden 3 nights. I'm really proud of that, very, very proud of that. KISS is a phenomenon, I mean, we really are. It's scary. I don't like to think about it a lot because it scares me. I believe we're that big until I get on the ramp and run up it and hit the stage. And doing 4 solo albums and still being in KISS is great.
Somebody said to me in an interview last night, did you guys, like, after the 4 solo albums came out, did you sit down at a table and have a meeting and discuss, you know, the ins and outs of how the albums were? And I go, no, nobody wanted to talk about the records because they didn't want to admit mine was the best.
The headaches with the other 2 guys in the band continued. Peter was depressed. Ace was as infuriating as ever, and both of them were increasingly being controlled by substances.
You know, I've seen other UFOs. I think one landed in my on my property in Yorktown, New York.
Oh, no.
Ace's behavior was probably more interesting, although no less maddening.
Well, you got to remember in those days, kind of me and Peter were a little loaded. So, you know, things kind of flew over our heads. I had a saying, give me a 6-pack of beer and lock me in a closet and I'll be happy. I guess it's the German in me, you know, I love beer.
Wow.
And it always put me in a good mood, and I was a happy drunk for the most part, you know, but obviously after years and years of alcohol abuse, you know, I started, you know, fooling around with the other kind of stuff that wasn't good. You know, it catches up to you. Paul and Gene were kind of taking care of business a lot more than me and Peter, you know, on touring and stuff. You know, we were pretty much party animals, you know. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I did it, believe me.
Ace has always struck me as never living up to his potential. He could play guitar, write songs, and do any number of other things, but he's never applied himself.
I never took a guitar lesson, and just about every day somebody comes up to me and says, you know, if it wasn't for you, I never would have picked up a guitar. You know, and I feel guilty because I never took a guitar lesson. I go, you're idolizing an idiot.
What? He's admitted to being chronically lazy and a flake.
Paul and Gene are workaholics, and, you know, I like to take more time off and relax. I mean, I'm going to be honest, folks. I'm a little lazy. I'm going to admit it, but it's okay because when I do create, it's genius.
He can put an idea together that has a spark of brilliance, but he won't go that extra mile to get trademarks and copyrights. You can see hundreds of guitar straps today, for example, with big lightning bolt designs on them, straps that are used by everyone from country acts to rap bands. That's Ace's design. He walked in one day with this strap and I said, "That's great. Let's trademark that. It'll sell like hotcakes." I had a heart-to-heart talk with him. He just wouldn't do it. After the fact, I said, "You really missed out on a big one." He said, "I'll think of another one." He never did.
You know, I really rather focus on playing guitar and singing and performing. You know, all the other business stuff drives me crazy. I just got up there and played my ass off and looked cool.
You